Hi, Simon.
Hi, Deanna.
Welcome to the Looking Back podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
It will be fun to talk to you. I think you're one of the inspirations for this podcast because we always have such great conversations that I think to myself, someone should be recording this.
Well, I hope other people think the same.
I don't care if they do, but just for nostalgic purposes, somebody should be recording the things that we talk about. I'm already the one swearing. Okay, so Simon, this is your show. You tell any story, all the stories, however you want. I personally, I want to tell you that no matter how bad you make some of these stories out to sound, in my experience, you have never truly now everyone has a different perception of misbehaving. But in my mind, I've never seen you misbehave. You have always been nothing but a gentleman and a responsible man and cheerful. I've enjoyed every moment I've ever spent with you in all the years we've known each other.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
No, it really does. You're going to tell some wild stories in this podcast, and I'm just going to be shaking my head because I don't think that you have ever done anything wrong in your whole life.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. But I'm also not easily shocked, so we'll see how it goes.
I will tell you this.
Tell me.
Without trying to like excuse behavior that I have done in the past. I've always had a good heart. But as we'll get into, insecurities and depression and mainly insecurities that I grew up with influenced me into doing unacceptable and just unacceptable behavior. So, so I was born in Denver, Colorado, and they moved here to Albuquerque 2 years later in 1972. And so I was born in Denver, and I love the Denver sports. You know, I'm a Denver Bronco fanatic, but I consider myself a Burqueño. I'm from Albuquerque. This is where I grew up. My mom and dad were children of the 60s, and they were children of the 60s. Let's just leave it at that. We all know what that means. So I grew up, there was a lot of drug use in my house. There was, my dad was a heavy drinker. It was, to today's standards, life was extremely different back then. It was way different for children back then than it is now. And I'll give you an example. I was thinking about this last night. So my mom and dad divorced when I was 7 years old in 1977. And when they divorced, we were living in the Mountain View apartments on Yale and Cole or something, or Yale and just north of Gibson. For those of you who aren't from Albuquerque, it's about what would you say, Deanna, like a 20-acre apartment complex? It's a huge apartment complex with maybe 200 or 300 units.
And it's well known.
For better or worse reasons.
A lot of the wrong reasons.
Yeah. But this is the reason I bring it up. This is how things have changed. So my parents divorced when I was 7, and when they divorced, we moved from Mountain View. So what I'm going to tell you had to happen when I was between 6 and 7. And I remember distinctly, there was a Circle K on Yale, there's a street that separates Mountain View apartments from this big vacant lot, and then the Circle K on Yale, which is a semi-busy street. So that means I used to go there by myself all the time. Back in the day, you could get a little white bag of candies for $1. You could fill up a bag of candy for $1. And I remember going to that Circle K by myself many times. And that means I was doing that at 6 years old. 6 years old. And I look back at that and I think, wow, who would let their 6-year-old kid travel across a vacant field to a Circle K by himself to buy candy? And not only that, I think I remember my mom and dad sending me to Circle K to like buy eggs, buy milk. Also, I remember having to go to school by myself every morning, and I would have to cross Yale, walk to school. I would across the street from Yale is the UNM sports complex, and I would sneak under the fence and cross the football field, and then sneak under another fence and go to Lowell Elementary. And I did that every day by myself at 6 years old. 6 years old.
Can I ask, was it that your parents thought that was normal and safe, or were they busy with other things? Where were they? Why were they telling? Why were they? Because I was there too. I had to walk to school in a war zone in Albuquerque in kindergarten. And I remember thinking, this doesn't seem like a safe thing for them to have a 5-year-old do. But I don't think in that particular instance, there wasn't enough adults in my family. There was no one to pick me up from school, so I had to walk to my grandma's house. And it wasn't
So
far. It wasn't far, but that was my family's circumstance. Was your family, what were they thinking?
I can't tell you what they were thinking. At that age, I was just doing, but I kind of believe that back then we were just expected to take care of our own business. It wasn't like, I don't think it was my parents were neglecting me, or I think it was kind of a normal deal back then that, hey, you have school, you have to go get your ass up and go to school. And it wasn't coddling. It was, you know, sometimes I watch like Yellowstone or I watch these Netflix movies and they talk about how yeah, and I don't know, you just hear about like back in the day, way back in the day, children had to get up at 4 and milk the cows. That was their job, and they had to do it, and it was just required. And when I was growing up, I was required to go to school, and I just had to do it, and it wasn't even a question. And I didn't, and it wasn't like you said you were thinking when you were walking, this might not be a safe thing. I don't even remember thinking it might not. It was just life. That's just how it was. I had to get up. I had to get myself ready for school. I had to go to school. Um, I don't really and can't really, I don't remember and can't really attest to what my parents were thinking. I don't know. I was 6 years old. I was just doing what I was doing.
Well, uh, to be fair, I don't think your parents were at home wasted on drugs. So that's good. Given how a lot of us grew up, there was plenty of that too. So
Well, I will
I,
tell you this. At the same time, I do remember at Mountain View, one of the reasons my parents got a divorce was I remember distinctly going to bed listening to my dad beat the shit out of my mom. So there was that going on as well. And I remember waking up in the morning, and for me, it was somewhat like a Christmas or something. I would wake up in the morning and I would go downstairs and there would be Doritos and dip and my mom and dad had stayed up all night and um, there was all kinds of snacks and stuff in the living room. And I would go down and pilfer through the snacks that they were having at night while we were in bed. So, you know, My mom and dad were definitely drug users. Um, I wouldn't say hardcore drugs. I mean, pot and
Yeah.
alcohol.
Well, I guess that's the difference in my mind. I'm a Gen X kid. If your parents are actually conscious, they're
Oh, okay.
probably the more functional parents in the neighborhood.
I get that. That's
Because
fine.
more than a few of our friends had parents who were heavy drug users, and
Yeah, and they weren't
you know,
even conscious. Yeah.
yeah. So, and they weren't literally. So I know your parents weren't that, and in my mind, hey, that's a functional family, but no, it's not.
You know,
I
in
know
the
what you're saying.
70s, kind of, you're right. It was very prevalent. I mean, it was a different time, Deanna. It was
Uh,
different.
it's a big question that I asked myself. Was it just a normal thing, or were they naive, or was the world not bad yet? Oh, there's the dog. She's got an
The dog
opinion.
weighed in. She said it
Yeah.
was a normal thing. It
But
was a
that's probably
normal
what I
thing.
suggest too, that it was just, I don't know, because you hear people talk about how you used to let the kids go out and play. Can't believe we let them do that. But I'm thinking,
I
your
can't believe
parents,
we don't now.
that's
That's
true.
what I think. I think, why don't we let them do it now? I mean, I have 6 grandchildren, and I am shocked. Shocked isn't the right word. I'm amazed, I guess is the word, that at the level of security my children have on their children, to the point where I'm like, God, sometimes when I'm not working, I'll grab my grandkids and we'll just go. I'll just take them out walking. I have Facebook posts of me and my grandkids in the ditches taking pictures of graffiti, because that's what I did when I was a kid. I'm,
Sure, why not? It's art.
I take them exploring. I say, let's go explore. And we just go walking and we go into the Sanjo and we just walk. And when I was a kid, that's what I did. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have Apple. We didn't have none of that shit. We had 4 channels on TV and they all sucked. And so when I was bored, I would go outside and walk the fields. And back in that day, by the airport, by my house, the fields were kind of like a pseudo dump. People would just go back there and dump trash. And one of my favorite things to do was go back there and explore through people's trash.
You make do with what you got.
I mean,
Uh,
I wouldn't really keep it. I would just like to explore what was there and look at what was there. And,
uh,
and, and sometimes if I found something cool, I'd bring it home.
I often remark how lucky we were that we were in New Mexico because we have such great rocks. So when I was outside playing, there was always just rocks to
I
look
bet
at, and
Joe loves that.
it's not a coincidence that I married a geologist. It really isn't. And whenever we go to New Mexico, I'm like, what is this? Tell me more.
I don't know if you
So
remember, but me and my mom would take us to the mountains
and bring
and,
home rocks.
and bring home rocks.
Yeah,
She
your
would,
mom and I
Simon,
were
get that rock.
Yeah, your mom and I were friends partially because we shared a love of rocks, and not just crystals, but mostly just rocks.
Rocks, yeah, like lava rocks, or just the way
Yeah,
it was shaped, or the
yeah,
cut of it, or whatever.
yeah. Uh, it's just a thing. I think we're lucky to be from the state we are because it has great geology. And if you're a kid playing outside, you're going to look at the ground. You're going to look at the dirt. You're going to look at the trash. You're going to look at the old things in the bushes, somebody's
Yeah,
washing machine.
exactly.
I actually remarked recently, I saw this really nice tree, this big tree out in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, the only thing's missing is the homeless guy. Because you could totally live under a tree in New Mexico as a homeless person, and it's a great life, so to
I
speak. But it's an outside culture. But do your kids Are they not taking their grandkids outside because you live in the city and nobody goes outside anymore? Or it's
No,
just
no, that's not that. But when they go, they got to go with them. So when I went, I'm not even kidding. There were times my mom would say, I'm cleaning the house. Don't come back till the sun comes down.
so people tell those stories, but in your instance, you were in the city. You were in inner city, in a part of the city that wasn't really very safe. And it also had huge streets. Like these are, even back then, they're 4 lanes wide with
Yeah,
stoplights and speeding traffic. So
45
I'm just
miles an hour, 50.
yeah. So I'm just pointing out when people tell those stories, like my parents made me go outside. Outside wasn't always just like the country.
No,
Sometimes it was the graffiti in the
sometimes it was.
arroyo.
Yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
it was exploring the arroyos and walking the arroyos in Albuquerque can take you the entire course of Albuquerque. So if you walk 4 hours north in the arroyo, you're on Montgomery,
Yep.
which I don't know if people can relate, but you can relate. I mean,
No. Well, I
that's a
can't.
long.
Yeah. We used to leave my neighborhood and go through the arroyo to come up the other side of the freeway, and then we could go around town.
I mean,
Uh,
anyway, that's how I spent most of my childhood. Now, in this process, my mom and dad divorced, and we moved to Ninth Street and Central.
Central
Um,
being Route 66 in Albuquerque,
yeah,
the center of everything. Motor lodges, the university, a downtown area. So I'm just pointing out for viewers that Central Avenue is Route 66. It's an incredibly historical American highway, and I think it shaped our lives and definitely shaped the city that we're from. So
but
anyway, Fourth
having
Street and Central.
having said that, it's also kind of because it's so old and has so much history. It's also kind of a breeding ground for um, prostitutes, druggers, homeless people. It's not the best part of Albuquerque.
Oh,
It's not the greatest part of Albuquerque. And well, my mom, after the divorce, my mom moved there on Ninth Street, which is it's kind of in the old railroad district of Albuquerque. One of the oldest parts of Albuquerque. And we moved there, and I would have to take my brother, who is 4 years younger than me. We would walk again. I was like 7, 8 years old, and I would take my brother and walk him to Sacred Heart, where he was too young to go to school, so he had to go to daycare. And I would take him to Sacred Heart on my way to Dolores Gonzalez Elementary, which was probably about 3 miles away from our home. And so I just want to point out times were different back then. It was different. Kids were expected to kind of toe their own line. Or at least I was. I don't know how everybody was, but you were just expected to. I had to pick Lucas up after school, bring him home. My mom worked the 3 to 11 shift. So I had to bring him home, and then I had to make him. It was my responsibility to have him make dinner, have some. Now, a lot of times mom would have prepared stuff. She was a struggling single mom. She was trying to do her best. She had pre-prepared stuff, but she taught me how to fry eggs and make toast and, uh, you know. But what I really want to point out is me and my brother had a lot of free time, where it was just me and him. And we would run around the house. We would play The Floor is Lava, and we had to get from the living room to the bedroom without touching the floor. And we'd be swinging on doors and uh, crawling off the bookcases. And doing it, whatever. We were just kind of wild. We were really kind of wild. And we would go outside and pull all the leaves off the trees and stuff them in plastic bags and play bank robber and act like it was cash. And we would, play. There was a portion of our house that has what are the trees that we have in Albuquerque? Those ones that grow real fast.
The cottonwood trees.
No, not the cottonwoods. The ones
The
that grow real
the willow
fast.
trees. The willow
No,
trees.
they're like
Elm
really,
trees. Elm trees.
they're really, really small trees. They kind of look. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we had this one portion of our yard that had these trees and was like woody, and then the other portion of the yard was barren. So we would play like we were coming out of the desert and finding this oasis in the yard. I mean, we had these wild imaginations. We spent a lot of time just me and my brother alone, just us two playing. Our imaginations running wild, just playing games. And that was kind of my childhood. Every now and then, Dad would come, and sometimes he'd be drunk, and sometimes he'd knock the shit out of us. I mean, he was. My dad had like this, and he was kind of. I love my dad, and I loved him, and but it doesn't negate the fact that he was abusive to us. He was a very angry person. And because of his anger, he didn't know how to. His mom had died when he was like 5 or something, and he grew up without her. And my dad was just, when he drank, he could become very abusive. And then he'd wake up in the morning and tell us how sorry he was, and that was even worse. It was like, I'm never going to drink again for the 100th time. It's just like this cycle of he'd knock us around. And when I say abuse, I don't mean like he'd lock us in a closet in chains or anything. He would just get rowdy, grab us by the collar, smack us around a little bit. It wasn't like horrible abuse. It was just kind of roughhousing to a degree.
It's not uncommon. I've noticed with young men, you have sometimes the older men play pretty rough, and I'm just making him tough or something.
Yeah, know. Mm-hmm. So I guess where am I going with all this? So that was kind of my pre-adolescent life, right? Mom struggled. We were always broke. Like, and I'm not trying to sound weepy or sad or, this is just the truth. So like my birthday present would be to go to Fur's, because Fur's cafeteria was all you could eat. And I could eat 2 or 3 plates, It was like, oh, this is the day I get to eat as much as I want. That was not I couldn't eat as much. A lot of times I would leave the dinner table and I was still hungry. And you can attest, Deanna, when you met me, what was I, like 100 pounds, maybe 110 pounds? I was skinny, small, and I didn't get a lot of meals. I didn't get to eat. I would go to school, and I remember filling my stomach with the water fountain to fill my stomach at Wilson. Anyway, so that's a crybaby story, but
it's authentic.
It's the truth. It's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So then my mom got an opportunity to buy this house that I'm in right now. I guess that would have been, it was right before I went to Wilson. So that would have been what, 83, 84. And she got the opportunity to buy her first home, and she purchased it in the Kirtland Edition in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Kirktown, which which was historically, up to that point, it was historically the black neighborhood in town. And so we moved here, and it was an adjustment. My first few trips to the bus stop were altercations. What are you doing here? This ain't your neighborhood. I guess it was reverse racism or something. I just wasn't supposed to be in the KTP.
Kirktown?
Kirktown, Piru.
Kirktown, Piru.
Yep.
Okay.
I wasn't supposed to live here. This is where the Kirk boys live. I wasn't supposed to be here. And so I remember waking up and dreading going to the bus stop. I hated going to the bus stop because those kids were waiting up there for me. But I would get up, and I don't know what it was in me. I don't know if it was just I had no choice, or if it was I would get up and I would go every fucking day. Every day I would go. And for a long time, for the first few times we fought, they would actually but then after a while they were like, oh, this boy's coming back again. They got bored with me, or maybe, I don't know. And then after a while, even after longer time, they started respecting me. They were like, hey, Simon, what's up? Just the fact that I kept going, just the fact. It wasn't because I was a tough guy. It wasn't because I started whooping their ass. It was just because I just didn't give up. I just kept going. And after a while, I see them on the streets now, the ones that are still alive. I see them on the streets now, and we're like homies. They're like, Garcia, Simon, what's up, dog? So
family. It's family. Yeah. You can't know someone for 20, 30, 40 years and not be family, even if they kick your ass in middle school. It's just, it's what makes family. Sure, they had their own reasons for being those people, and I'm sorry they took it out on you, but possibly their home lives weren't much better.
I bet they weren't. They were probably worse.
Mm-hmm. I'm proud of you for keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, me too.
That does kind of fit your story. It's just what you do. You just keep working. You're good like that.
I had a grandfather who was a captain in the Air Force, and then when he retired, they promoted him to lieutenant colonel. And he was always kind of my inspiration. So growing up in the 70s, like I said, we had 4 channels. And there wasn't, when I did stay home and watch TV, my favorite shows were The Twilight Zone, The Lone Ranger, Bonanza. I started really identifying with the kind of the cowboy, the independent, can do anything.
Protector.
Yeah, protector. Yep. But who does the right thing? Who does the right thing? And my grandfather, in my eyes, I don't know. I've never heard any bad about him. I'm sure there has to be somewhere, but I never heard anything bad about him. Everybody loved my grandfather. He, like I said, he was a captain in the Air Force when he retired. And he always kind of made sure that me and Lucas didn't, he couldn't buy us a man, but he always made sure that things didn't get too bad, that we were all, and going to Granny and Grandpa's, because there again, That was almost like my birthday. If we went to Granny and Grandpa's, I could eat as much as I want. Granny would make me 4 plates of spaghetti, and I would eat 4 plates of spaghetti.
This is your mom's mom?
Yeah, my mom's mom. My dad's mom died when he was 5, and my grandfather died when I was 8. On my dad's side.
So just to get off topic a little bit, but what did they do? Because he was in the Air Force. So did he end up in Albuquerque at the Air Force Base?
At Kirtland Air Force Base, yeah.
Okay.
That was his
Okay.
final station. And my grandmother was a homemaker.
Okay. Where's their family from?
Kansas City, Kansas.
Really?
Yeah, not my maiden name, but my mom's maiden name is Bridges.
Really?
Yeah, Bridges, which is a Dutch name.
Okay.
So, so I'm Dutch Mexican.
Okay.
Which is funny because I did a.
That was my next question. Haven't we learned otherwise?
Yeah, I did a. What do you call it? A ME or a
23andMe.
23andMe.
Okay.
I did a cotton swab on my mouth, and it turns out I'm actually 22% Irish.
They tell you if that's on your mother or father's side?
It doesn't really say, or I didn't read into it that much. Maybe it does say, but I didn't go in that much in depth. I was just like, oh, Irish, Mexican. Yeah, that makes some sense.
I have to tell you that a lot of your friends were all talking about it too. Like, did you hear Simon? He's Irish. It's just funny because we all should have been able to guess that. You know, like we wouldn't have thought so, but now we're like, oh, now we know Simon, he's Irish. That's why you kept going back to the bus stop every morning. You're like, I can scrap with the best of them.
It's amazing. It's crazy, isn't it? So
Yeah,
I don't know.
There'll be more than a few Irish people on this podcast.
So I don't know I don't know what Granny was doing in her early days or what, but I don't know how that comes about, but that's the DNA of it, right? I did kind of research it a little bit, and I guess there was a Dutch migration to Ireland in the 1600s or something like that, and so maybe somehow that makes sense. I don't know. Or maybe the other way around, an Irish migration to.
We should study that. Yeah. I would study that for you. Send me your login and password. And I'll go through all that. My dog is so jealous. She's trying really hard to get both of our attentions.
I see that.
You can hear the squeaking of the toy. She's tried everything. I'm supposed to make this professional podcast, and I got the dog squeaking the toy. Yeah,
put her on your lap.
She's a little big for that. Okay. So you did 2 different elementary schools. Then you got to Wilson Middle School, but you stayed there the whole time.
Yeah.
And from there, you went to Highland High School.
That's right. But before we get to Highland,
okay.
Through everything that I just told you, I think it's important for me to set the scenario of what we're going to get into in Highland, because there was a time I was really out of control. I mean, like epically out of control, and we'll get there. But I don't want to glamorize it. It wasn't because I was a badass or a tough. It was because all of this that I just kind of laid down, I was a very insecure. I was 100 pounds soaking wet. I'd been fighting my whole entire existence. I had a very low self-esteem, which I have to this day a little bit. I was very insecure. So when I started going to Wilson and when I started maturing, getting into adolescence, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I was doing everything I could to present to everybody something that I wasn't feeling in my own heart, if that makes any sense at all. I would do everything I could. Now, because of my insecurities and I was really, really very shy around girls. And I don't know if you saw that or if that's your perception, but inside, that's how I was feeling. Now, I would try to mask it by this bravado attitude. So maybe other people didn't see that. Maybe other people thought, oh, he's an arrogant ass. That was me trying to mask what I was feeling inside. But what I really started focusing on, because I was shy and awkward and not very stylistic. I wasn't, I wore a leather jacket and black shirt with the sleeves cut off and jeans that probably hadn't been washed in a couple of days. So I wasn't really particularly a ladies' man. So the avenue that I took to try to prove to everybody that I was a badass tough guy was I would get in trouble. I would get in trouble. I would do things that scared the shit out of me. I would do stupid, idiotic things. I would do everything I could to prove to everybody in the world that I was a tough guy. And it started at Wilson. I would fight guys bigger than me. I would mouth off to the teachers. I was just, I was just trying to prove to everybody, maybe even, in probably more to myself, that I could handle this. Inside, I'd be scared to death. I was scared to death of the shit I was doing. It was scaring me to death. And then, so I wanted to set that started at Wilson. And I kind of, people that you don't know, but that remember me from Wilson, Eddie Shannon, Danny Needler, there's people that still reach out to me and they're like, they didn't know me at Highland at all. They're talking about Wilson, middle school. And they're like, oh, I remember you. You'd throw hands at the drop of a hat. Now, what they don't say, because they're polite, is I'd get my ass kicked almost every time. I was 100 pounds. People would throw me around like a rag doll. But I would go back, just like the bus stop. I would go back and back because I was so intent on proving to people that I was this guy, this John Wayne guy.
But given the story that you've told about the bus stop, is you were living in an environment where you had to prove yourself to be macho. So I understand being insecure and I understand not having a role model or having a role model that had an angry temper. But it also sounds like the circumstances you were in required you to be that. Like the craziest guy in prison is the one that they're going to mess with the least. It's hard to say that all without swearing, but I just want to point out your circumstances kind of demanded that.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, you do have a reputation of being the guy that would go full throttle, 100%, at the drop of a hat. So you won that game, as far as I've been told. Uh, but also, it kind of seems like that was the life.
I mean, Deanna, when you're 100 pounds, 110 pounds,
Got to make up
going
for it
full
somehow.
throttle at the drop of a hat, first of all, you got to be the first one to throw a punch. You can't, if somebody punches, if you let them punch you first, you're out. So you got to be the first to throw the punch, and you got to be the wildest, crazy. Sometimes you have to pick up whatever's around and hit them in the head with it, you know? Yeah.
That's a pretty tough middle school. I mean, my middle school wasn't that different, but I dare think not everybody had to prove themselves in the prison yard in junior high.
In sixth grade, seventh grade.
Yeah. I mean, part of the theory behind my podcast here is, yeah, we've all made choices, but a lot of those choices were based on the circumstances and in which we found ourselves.
Well, yeah, but Deanna, that's life, man. That's
Sure.
life.
Sure. Sure.
That's what everybody throughout history has had to do.
Adapt to their environment.
Adapt to their environment. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to tell my story, because I spent you know what I was thinking about the other day is that we've known each other now, what, 30 years?
Oh, freshman year of high school. So
Yeah.
whenever that was.
But when did we really know each other, like on a daily basis?
I
It
don't
was
know if,
like 84 to 87. There was only like
yeah,
3 years. There was
yeah.
only like 3 years.
But that 3 years mattered. It
Oh yeah.
mattered so much. And it still matters. We're all still friends today. I don't know why,
Because of
because it
those,
was so friggin' hard. It was just so real because the circumstances were.
it's kind of like it's it's kind of like the veterans I served with in Iraq. Um, you know, when very intense periods of time forge bonds. When it's very intense, it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be a very short period of time, but it's so intense that you learn everything about people in a very short period of time. And when I mean everything about them, I mean
Everything.
when you can trust them, or if what they feel, their insecurity, their triumphs, you can just look at their face and know how they're feeling.
I can read facial expressions and body language from across a parking lot. I mean, I can look at a stranger and just by how they carry themselves,
It's
just tell how their day is. Not whether they're a good or bad person, just like, oh, gee, that guy, he came home from work. I can tell by his body language or the look on his face.
yeah,
You
it's
learn to
it,
study people.
you learn to study people, and then my 3 years. So I didn't even go to Highland. I think I went my freshman year partly, and then my sophomore year I went to Highland every day, but I didn't go to class. I went to smoke cigarettes and hang out with people and try to sell my mom's pot, because my mom she had like a side hustle that she would send me. And most of the time it was a disaster because I would just take it with my friends and smoke it with them and not bring home any money at all. And then my junior year, in the middle of the year, I went to Phoenix. So it wasn't even 3 years. I moved to Phoenix and went to auto mechanic school. Do you remember
Wow.
that? Do you even remember that?
I remember that, but I didn't realize that you were gone. But I guess my junior year, myself and one other person were the only ones left. Nobody else was still in school. Everyone was gone.
Yeah,
Which,
I was in Phoenix, Arizona at Phoenix Institute of Technology, and in Phoenix is where I joined the Army. Um, Partly because of patriotism, because I wanted to be John Wayne, right? I wanted to make my grandfather happy. But if you want to know the truth, the big reason was because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was scared to death that I was going to become homeless. And I had been hungry my whole life. I was like, okay, you're going to give me 3 cots and a hot, or 3 hots and a cot? Yeah, that sounds like a great deal. Sign me up. And so in high school, though, let's go over some things. Let's go over some things about my
okay.
character. About
Okay.
in high school, I was on that same path, and we hung out with some pretty tough. I mean, Brad could be tough. He was a fighter, but Dominic, you remember Dom? You remember? I mean, uh, Vance, Eddie. There was this one guy. I was trying to remember his name. He drove like a, God, what was his name? He was a crazy, crazy motherfucker. Yeah, sorry. God, what was his name? I can't remember his name, but he drove like a old station wagon, and I want to say his name wasn't Levi. It was, anyway. He was older than all of us, and Eddie and Vance, and they kind of looked up to him. I remember one time we were walking down Central with him. God, I wish I could remember his name. We were walking down Central, and we were down by where that old Hastings was. No, it wasn't Hastings. It was right across the street from Yale Park. There was a record store. We're down there, and he sees this guy that he's got a beef with. We're on Central Avenue, right on Central Avenue. And he gets in his face, and they're like nose to nose. And me and somebody else, I can't remember who was with me, but we were with him. And all of a sudden we hear this tinkle. And we look down, and he's pissing on his leg. I swear to God. He's pissing. I mean, he's fighting with this guy. He's like, yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden he's pissing on his leg. And it's just like the biggest form of disrespect, obviously. And this guy just backs down. He just cowers. He's like, I didn't mean anything by it. I'm sorry, Leroy or Levi or whatever this guy's name was. Anyway, I started hanging out with back then I thought the toughest guys I could find. I started hanging out with psychopaths. This was a psychopath.
An extremely dangerous individual.
Yeah. I mean, he was, for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who do know, we were friends, so forgive me if you think I'm talking shit about him, because I loved the guy. We were friends forever, but Vance was on America's Most Wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
and that's another one who never misbehaved in my presence. I can call him a friend because he never would have done that bad shit around me. But
we did it together. Me and hung out together. Deanna, we stole trucks, pulled the engines out of them, sold them. I've stolen vehicles. I met this one guy. I don't even remember where. You're not going to believe this. This is God's to honest truth. His name was His name was, I met him somewhere. I was trying, because of this podcast and I knew what was coming up, I was trying to think, where the hell did I meet? He taught me how to still IROC Zs.
Everybody had their trade.
I would joyride them. I mean, I wasn't selling them. It wasn't a trade. I wasn't making money off of them. I walked everywhere. I don't know if you remember, but I walked everywhere. I would walk for hours and hours and hours to get from Highland High School to my house. Was like a 2-hour walk every day, every single day. So I walked everywhere, and when it's taught me how to steal an IROC Z. IROC Z's, the whole console is plastic. So I'm not
Steal
going
those IROCs to drive yourself home.
Yeah, I'd drive myself home and I'd put it at the park and then I'd walk home. And then if it was still there in the morning, sometimes I'd wake up and go get it again. I took one to, remember these and his mom shared on, what was
Columbia.
it? Yeah. And was there. And I told him, come check out my new car. And he came out and he saw it was this beautiful blue IROC Z. And he was like, oh my God, how'd you get this? I said, get in, let's go for a ride. And he got in and he saw the console all torn up and he was pissed. He was mad.
You did not think that stuff was funny.
No, he did not think it was funny. And it wasn't funny. But here again, it was me
being the tough guy. Being the tough guy around some of the most dangerous people.
Yeah. Yep.
So somehow you managed to find yourself around the most dangerous people in the most dangerous group, but you had to be tougher than them.
Well, yeah, because my insecurities said, oh, these guys. But I was the little puppy dog in the cartoon bouncing around Butch, right?
Yeah.
Come on, Butch, what are we going to do today? Let's go do this. Let's go do this. And when I was hanging around, I would say, okay, let's go do this. And before you know it, we're 7-Eleven. You know, we didn't have a gun. We would just tell the clerk, try to stop us. We're taking this 12-pack. Stop us. And, yeah, so that's not that. There's several, I did that with others too. Several instances of that kind of, God, really regretful behavior. I mean, looking back on it now, I'm not trying to, like I started this off saying, I'm not now, and I never have been a tough guy. I've just been a actor playing. I've just been an actor playing, trying to be something that I'm not. But back in those days, I was so insecure I couldn't admit that, not even to myself. But I'm going to tell you something that happened that saved my life. And so in the midst of all this, I mean, I could go on telling you more. There's countless stories of horrible
Bad behavior.
But I think you got the gist.
Yeah.
Oh, what I didn't bring up that I think is important to this, the same way that I was with trying to prove, I also was that with drug use. I would try anything. If you gave it to me, I would take it. I was completely trying to escape reality on a daily basis. Pot was a day-to-day thing. Now, I couldn't handle alcohol at all back then.
Get mad, bad temper, start fighting.
Get sick, throw up, pass out.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't handle it at all. I would get sick, I would throw up and pass out. I mean,
Okay.
it would just, I would try to keep up with the bigger boys, and I was 100 pounds, you know?
Also like 14.
Yeah, yeah. 14 is what we're talking about. 14.
Yeah.
14.
15 would have been old. That would have been the later years.
Um,
16 is when you're headed off to Phoenix.
yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
17 is when I joined the Army.
Yeah.
So, so I didn't really like alcohol because I always ended up throwing up, passing out, waking up and listening to everybody talk shit about how I got sick and threw up and can't handle alcohol. But LSD, PCP, methamphetamine, cocaine, if I could get it. I never had money for cocaine, but I was experimenting with anything and everything, drugs, violence, obviously women if I could get them, but that was not very often. Anything I could get to kind of just blur out the monotony of day-to-day life, I was doing. I was taking on everything and anything that came my way. I was trying to experience all of life, and I was very depressed. And I don't think any of you know this. I don't know if you do or not. I don't think I ever discussed it with you guys, but I attempted suicide at least 3 times in those 3 years. I OD'd on a bunch of pills, had to go to the ER. I had put, and this time I got guns. I had guns. I had shotguns and 10-22. Remember the one I got busted with at Winchell's? I always had guns. I don't know. I came across guns all the time. I'd put them in my mouth and try to get the courage to blow my head off. I was really miserably depressed. And that's one of the reasons my mom signed when I was 16 to go to Phoenix. She had to sign off a waiver to let me go to Phoenix. I must have been 17. Like it was 16 turning 17 or something like that. But that's she knew. Me and my brother, we would stack her books in a row when she was at work. And we'd sit on the couch in the house and shoot my guns into her books so that we could find the bullet. That's kind of how we entertained ourselves.
Wow.
I was taking my rifles out to the fields that when I was a kid, I would go through the dump and trash and stuff like that. I would take my 30-30 out there and kill jackrabbits and anything and then I'd grab the jackrabbits and I'd bring them back and I'd skin them and barbecue them. And
This is boredom, anger, depression, attempt for attention, or just a total lack of role models. You didn't know what was good behavior. You were just making it up.
all of the above.
Okay.
I can't honestly tell you. I just know that I was never really happy. I was never really happy. And I was always trying to impress other people. I was always trying to impress you guys. I always wanted you guys to think I was cool. I was always, but I was never really happy with myself. And then I joined the Army. Thank God the Army took me. thank God the Army took me, because I think I'd be in prison or dead right now if they had. The United States Army took me. I wanted to be a Marine. I went to the Marine recruiter first, and I didn't have a high school diploma. I had a GED that I had gotten at Phoenix, at the Phoenix Institute of Technology. So I had a GED. The Marines wouldn't take a GED. The Army would. So I ended up joining the Army. And they sent me to Fort Dix, New Jersey for basic training. And I met a whole different cast of characters. It was a different type of environment. It was obviously, right? Obviously,
Well, you just
nobody
went from
was.
prison. You went from prison to the Army. I bet there were some similarities and yet some differences.
Yeah, there were similarities,
Mm-hmm.
but there was. Oh, this sounds so egotistical, and it probably is. But for the first time in my life, I was the hawk, not the chicken.
Really? Wow. Bet that felt good.
All of a sudden, I was not trying to impress anybody. I felt there was a bunch of goobers. I'm telling you, from like. Does you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. After prison, the Army boot camp was probably easy.
I was all of a sudden, I was the sharp guy. I was the tough guy, right? Just dealing with a bunch of farm boys from Kentucky. You know, I've been robbing cars and fighting at putt-putt, getting a crowbar cut across my face, and getting stabbed at Los Altos Park. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that.
Yep.
When was that?
With
Like middle school?
me and Pierre.
Oh, when was that? What year of school was?
Apodaca, Leah.
Yeah.
That was the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh yeah.
Lee Apodaca was the guy who pissed on the. Yep.
That's somebody I avoided like the plague. I got no friendship with that dude. I'm like, see ya. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was who I was trying to talk to. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I'm sneaking out the window because now I'm the slick guy, right? I'm sneaking out the window at night, and I'm sneaking to the cadre. The cadre in the Army is like the teachers, I guess, the drill sergeants and the administrative side of the barracks. And in the middle of the night, I would take people's orders and say, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want a Coke." "Okay, what do you want?" "I want Twinkies." "I want those. You remember those little cookies with the cream in them?" "Yeah, I want those." "Okay." I said, "All right." And I'd take all these orders, and I would literally sneak out the window and land on the chow hall roof, and then jump down that and go to the vending machines with a pillowcase, and I would buy all these snacks, fill the pillowcase, and then climb back up and sell them in the barracks. Make some extra scratch, a little money.
Still trying to prove that you can be the best and the baddest and the most ridiculous and win this game. Win this game, and then you got caught.
And I got caught.
Did anybody tell you the military wasn't going to put up with that?
In basic training, my last 2 weeks of basic training were waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going downstairs, doing calisthenics, doing my daily routine, which was the last 2 weeks is mostly first week is drill and ceremony. The last 2 weeks was mostly like combat training. It was like bivouacking and throwing grenades and learning how to use a firearm and cleaning your weapon and stuff like that. So I would do the full day with all the recruits. Then we'd go back to the barracks. We'd eat dinner, and then I had to report to CQ to paint the walls till 11 o'clock at night.
That was your punishment?
Yep, I had to paint the walls. And you should see the paint job I did. I mean, I'm telling you, I would wake up with the paintbrush in the floor, the, the wall all. I was dead tired, but they let me graduate. They didn't. They gave me an Article 15, which means it was like 15 days extra duty, which was painting the walls, 15-day reduction in pay, and I didn't have any rank yet, so they couldn't tank my rank. But they didn't expel me. I graduated basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then they brought me back to Fort Bliss, Texas. And I was a 24 Mike, which is an air defense artillery Vulcan system mechanic. A Vulcan is like this it's a 5-barrel Gatling cannon that shoots planes out of the sky. It shoots 20 millimeter, which 20 millimeter rounds are about the size of this block here. It would shoot 20 millimeter rounds, high explosive rounds at aircraft at a rate of like 530 per minute. I mean, just this amazing. If you ever get a chance, look up videos of a Vulcan system. It's just amazing. And I'm at Fort Bliss doing that, and Fort Bliss, Juarez was off limits. You're not allowed to go to Juarez, but when did Simon ever follow the rules? So me and my buddies, we would sneak off to Juarez, and one day I'm walking down through the bars of Juarez, me and my buddies, and lo and behold, I see some friends of mine. It was you, Robert, and James, right?
It was me and
Was it?
it was. We used to go to Juarez, drive to El Paso, and go to Juarez because it was probably safer than Albuquerque.
It probably was back then.
Well, we were young, and Juarez wasn't dangerous at that point. It was older, and my mom always took me to Juarez when I was a kid, so I wasn't unfamiliar with it. And our money went far. We could go to fancy restaurants and eat big meals, and none of us ever really drank too much because that would have been far too dangerous. It sounds horrible that I was a 16-year-old kid going to Juarez to party with my friends, but I was incredibly responsible while doing it. And anyway, one night when we were in Juarez, we ran into our friend Simon, who was stationed at Fort Bliss. It was the coolest thing that ever happened. Cool? I still have a picture of it. I love it. It was just so cool because we're family and it's like just drawn to each other. Except, were you really sneaking out? You weren't like on leave or whatever. You weren't supposed to be there?
No, we weren't supposed to be there. It was off limits.
Be sweet.
It was off limits.
Still, gotta prove yourself. Whatever they tell you not to do, you just do.
Yeah. Yeah, talk to my wife.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be another conversation. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been here an hour.
I know, it's great. We can keep
too
going.
Long?
Nope.
Okay. You can break it up if you have to, right?
I can, but really, you could follow this thread through, and then we'll just think of another one for next week.
Okay. So, and so I see there. So I'm going to tell you something about my military experience. The desire to be, I was going to say wanted and loved, but that really wasn't it was just to prove that I was I wanted to be wanted and loved. Everybody does. But I wanted so bad to prove that I was strong, that I was tough, that I was a man. A man. I wanted to prove that I was a man. That same desire I had in the Army. But in the Army, they had ways of doing that without necessarily me having to beat some Circle K clerk up or, you know, steal a car. They had ways to get that energy and direct it to, to positive thing. You know, at another time we can talk about what I learned, but I'm not sure.
Any man I know that's been in the military, despite the horrors that they saw, is usually pretty grateful for the things that they learned and the way the military was able to channel their anger and their frustration. And that's probably
Absolutely.
like the military probably used to be like the ADHD meds of the time. They just give you so darn much exercise and important stuff to think about that generally, hopefully, the anxiety and the depression and all the mental illnesses don't have room in your head because you're too tired.
Yeah. And because it's just refocused on um, being a soldier. It's the military has a way of taking that macho bullshit that I'm trying to achieve my entire life. And I can say now macho bullshit because that's what it was and that's what it still is. You know, just men trying to prove they're tougher than the next guy. But the military has a way of channeling that in a young man, but still perpetuating it.
That's the other thing I hear from men. While it had all the tools to be better, it was it's often referred to as just a bad environment, unhealthy, because you're surrounded by men that are all trying to prove something.
You're surrounded by a group of alpha males that are all trying to top each other, but we're being taught that we are a unit and a team, and our goal is to kill the enemy, not each other.
Each other. Yeah.
And so somehow it works. It works. It instead of having a bunch of individual wild dogs, you have a pack of wild dogs that are working together to take down a deer instead of each individual dog eating a guinea pig or something, you know?
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Retrain the brain.
yeah. So you're working as a unit, as a pack. And then Deanna, the greatest gift that God ever gave me uh, at that time in my life, the greatest gift that God ever gave me are my children and my wife, obviously. But at that time in my life, I didn't have them yet. So at that moment, a true gift from God was that the 82nd Airborne came down recruiting my MOS, which is a 24 mic. They wanted 24 mics. And for a young man who has spent his entire life trying to prove that he's a tough guy, the 82nd Airborne came down and they saw my PT record. And one thing through all of this, again, by the grace of God, I was blessed with, so I'm 110 pounds, but I'm a wiry son of a bitch. I'm strong as hell. I can run and run and run and never quit. Um, you know, like I had already said, I walked miles and miles every single day. I was scrawny, but I was wiry and strong. And they gave me a PT test, and 10 guys applied for the 82nd Airborne, and 2 of us made it. Me and my buddy Jimmy Curtis. 2 of us entered, and so all of a sudden, this young kid who has been trying his whole life to prove he's a tough guy has been accepted into the 82nd Airborne Division.
The elite tough guys.
Yeah.
The iconic tough guys.
The iconic tough guys, right? Literally the place where movies or legends are made. You know, movies are made about these paratroopers, you know, and all of a sudden I'm one of them. And not only that, I'm jumping out of airplanes with full combat gear. I was elated, Deanna. I was elated. I loved it. I was enjoying, I was just eating it up. It was everything I ever wanted to do, ever wanted to be. But I still had my demons. I had, you know, I was already becoming an alcoholic.
Because the military is good for that.
Yeah, it is. You know, I get to division, and there's a small group of, it's kind of back to the bus stop, because there's a percentage of these paratroopers, these elite paratroopers. I get to Fort Bragg, and there's a percentage of them that look at this 115-pound guy and they're like, "Fuck, this is what they're sending us now? What's our division coming to?" And I have to prove to them that, hey, you don't judge a book by its cover. And I fought a lot. I have a friend, Francisco Garcia, and we just met in San Antonio last summer, and we were reliving all our old memories, and it was like, yeah, everybody knew. If they wanted to fight, they weren't even mad at you. They were just mad at their girlfriend or whatever. They would go find you.
Because you're happy to throw down?
Because I'm happy to throw down. And let me reiterate this. It's not because most of the time, I'm going to tell you, I did not win a lot of fights. I'm not this bad macho dude who was just like, I lost. I was born a pretty guy. This is custom.
I like that. That's cool.
So yeah, I was not that, you know, I'm not trying to present this like I'm this macho tough guy. I just went to the bus stop every day, right? I just kept going back, and people, anyway, after a while, the same as the bus stop, after a while, even in the 82nd, I was considered one of the boys. You know, I would hang around with the tough crew. Just like that little puppy dog, like I told you at the cartoon, right? The little puppy dog around the bush. But it really did a lot to ease that desire that I had always wanted. And slowly I started building my own identity, my own self-confidence.
My gosh, you're only like 20 at this point.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you probably would have built your own identity and your own self-confidence around the same time anyway. You just had all that shit to lead up to it.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know, because I didn't experience anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe everybody goes through this, and I just think it was me.
Everybody goes through something. nobody's story is easy. And sometimes it happens later in life or earlier in life, but we all have our demons.
Yeah.
Yours just tells a good story.
Thank you. I'm glad it's a good story.
It's a great story, mostly because you've come out the other side so wise. So wise. But anyway, okay. So, military.
So
You're starting to build your own identity.
yeah, so I turn out the drive and force that had me. I outwork everybody in the motor pool. So I'm a mechanic, right? I'm at the 82nd. I don't know if people understand how the Army works, but all the equipment, all the artillery, all the tanks, all the trucks. I mean, you can't go to war without people who can fix them on the battlefield. You have to have a mechanic that goes out on the battlefield with this equipment. So the 82nd Airborne drops their equipment from planes behind enemy lines. And first and foremost, all of us are infantry, because if things go bad, we all have to fight the enemy, because we're all behind enemy lines. We're not in front of the lines. We're behind enemy lines. We're fighting from the rear. There is no escape. There is no cavalry coming. You know, we're dropped behind enemy lines to attack from behind. And so I I build a reputation with my NCOs, my senior NCOs, the squad leader, the staff sergeants. I outwork everybody. I'll get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, right after PT, and I have a medal on the wall that I just showed you, where we got a no faults noted. And a no faults noted means we have 6 Vulcan cannons, and when they inspect them, they're looking for, like, these are Vulcan cannons. I don't know how to explain it, but they're looking for rust on any part, any chain, the chains that connect the generator to the Vulcan, on the part that connects to the truck. You know, they're looking for rust on anything. They're looking that the machine operates correctly, obviously. They just inspect these things to the finest detail. We had 3 no faults noted in a row on these inspections, and I got a medal for it. I got a medal
because you did your job well.
Because I did my job well. And Sergeant Patterson and Sergeant Nelson, and we as a unit, as a pack, as a team, we all did our job well. We did it together. But we worked so good. We were such a well-oiled machine. We did our work so well. And I just became part of that unit, that pack, that we were kicking ass. And then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And you know what? I think we should leave it there.
That's a great place to pause. There's a lot more to tell.
Almost like I was made for this, huh?
It really is. It really is. You're telling a great story, and you look good while you're doing it.
Oh, I love you, Deanna.
I love you too. We will call this part 1, and we'll get back to part 2. And gosh, what else do we have? We have the Gulf War. We have love, children,
love, me coming
family.
home.
Yeah, there's a lot more to tell.
Business.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're still here to tell these stories, Simon. I really am.
Thank you, Deanna.
Yep. I'm proud of you.
Thank you for asking me to tell my story.
I love it. I love it. You are just the kind of person that makes me go, darn it, now I have to start a podcast.
I hope to. I'll be watching everybody else's too.
Yeah. Well, they're coming they're coming, but you're top of the list. I look forward to more. Thanks, Simon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Talk to you
bye.
later. Bye.
Thanks, bye.